working on Orcas, which is the next version of Visual Studio, right?
Right. It's the N+2 version. Is the way we refer.
We haven't even released Whidbey yet, right? That's
Right.
still
Right.
that's still a good chunk of time away from being released. We're about to go into beta 2 on that, right?
Right. Yeah, interesting. We internally we talk about N, N+1, N+2 sort of projects in tools. So Visual Studio, the current shipping product, Everett, the Visual Studio 2003, is regarded as like N. So N+1 is Whidbey, N+2 is Orcas. And then we're also thinking about the planning process for N+3.
Yeah.
So we are sort of we're working on one and we're planning 2 major releases sort of out from the one that's about to ship, this year.
Right.
So that's primarily what I've been involved in, and as we talked about the last time we chatted was about how we're getting ready to sort of plan the process of approaching Orcas and saying, okay, what is going to be in the product, how do we look at it, and that sort of thing. And so I thought it might have been interesting to talk a bit about what is that planning process. Those documents, actually it's one document printed many times.
Yeah.
No, it's not quite. One of the things that document, there is the market opportunity assessment.
Okay.
And the aim of that is basically for us to gather, to bring together all the different pieces of research we have. We have
these are done by marketers, right? So people who do surveys of both Linux and Mac and Windows developers.
Right. So if you really wanted to drill into exactly how they're created, the research comes from what we call primary and secondary research. Okay. So primary research is actual research that is done with a quantitative basis that speaks to customers, whether it's run by us, whether it's run by IDC, Gartner, whoever, but it's actual quantitative research. And so, the dev tracker that you've probably heard a million people talk about here is a bit of research that we run, and we pay millions of dollars for it, and we go out and we speak to developers, and we ask them, hundreds of questions, and not hundreds of questions, but like, a ton of questions, and we say, what tool do you use, what apps types do you build, what platforms do you target, and things like that, and we get back a set of like statistical data on that usage.
Now, are these like exit polls? Are they that accurate?
No. So actually, one of the funny thing is a lot of it used to be back when we first started doing this work in sort of the mid-90s. A lot of like the analysts and the press people wouldn't believe the numbers, because the numbers were far more positive to Microsoft than, what the sort of the common held belief was. And so the common refrain back to it was, well, you guys paid for it, therefore it's obviously skewed your way. One of the reasons we spend millions of dollars on that research is because we base our business decisions off it.
Yeah.
And you've got to, look at your research and give some sort of feel of quality. Do you want a piece of research that a company's going to go and spend $1 billion building some piece of software on, or do you want a piece of research that somebody's just going to go and wave a press release around? We spend a lot of money on. The way we actually do the dev tracker, just as an aside, is really interesting. We actually generate a random telephone number, and we ring that number. Preferably over dinner, because that's the best time to annoy people.
But you're the guy!
It's us. So, and we generate this random number, and we ask basically we call the customer, we call the number and say, are you a software developer? And if the person says no, we say, well, thanks very much, sorry for interrupting you, and move on. And then we find enough people to answer the are you a software developer question, and then basically our research people know that, okay, for this question to be accurate, we've got to get this number of respondents and so on. And so we just keep doing it until we get a statistically viable sample across the whole the whole survey.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of money doing that. So the numbers are actually, really very, very accurate. Some of the numbers in it are good to us, some of the numbers aren't. Obviously we would never quote a dev tracker number externally that wasn't good for us. There's a difference between, spin and stupidity.
Yeah.
But, we do base our business decisions off that. And so that's an example of primary research. And we grab that, we grab IDC numbers, we get, all the research firm numbers. Secondary research is like analyst reports. What do analysts think are happening? What are we getting back from focus groups? Things like that. And then what we do is we bring all of that research together, and we start the MOA process by saying, okay, what is sort of the question we want to answer? Yeah. And so we have an idea of what the question is, what we want to answer, and then we sort of say, okay, there's got to be some sort of buckets of research that will support or provide answers to that question. Okay, what are the individual pieces of research that we know of that fit in each of these buckets? And we build up this huge spreadsheet that says, here's all the different bits of research. And then what we do is we then go get all that research, print it out, and we basically sit down and look at all the bits of research and say, okay, how does this research match with this research and match with this one? And for want of a better word, they call the process synthesizing it. And the aim is to synthesize all that research together into a consistent set of data about the state of the market in many facets, financially, usage, direction.
But isn't this really good for building a product, assuming the market doesn't change?
Right. and that's exactly why the MOA is not...
I assume you've read Clay Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma,
right? Right. There's a lot of problem with looking at backwards data, backwards looking data. And one of the things that a lot of people make mistakes on when they think about how they're going to develop a product is they look at the data rather than looking at the trends. Yeah. And so the key to any piece of data is to get a set of trends. We can take a snapshot. We run the dev tracker every quarter. Yeah. And so if we looked at last quarter's numbers, we could say, ooh, okay, blah percent of people are building web apps in VB. Well, that's an important market. We should invest in that. Yeah. But without looking at what was the quarter before that, the VB number could be trending up, telling us that, yeah, it really is an important market. We've got to service it well. Yeah. It could be flat, indicating there's an opportunity for us to say, okay, we could grow the market if we understood why usage hasn't increased, or it could be trending down, in which case then, why is it trending down? Okay, it's trending down for the things that we can't affect, therefore we shouldn't invest in that market.
So the problems with that, though, now, is that trends hit so fast. Particularly if you want to be in the midst of the PR firestorm, like podcasting, right? Came out in July of last year, and now is being invested in by all these VCs, and so even here we're working on in just 6 months it just boom. Right. And how old is the data, and how fast can you react to changes like that? So
I'm sort of going to answer that question, but not quite. The issue that you raised is that trend data, and this is what a lot of, if you go down to Silicon Valley and you talk about this sort of concept to the startups now, somebody will say, well, you can never account for disruptive technologies and trends, right? And that's absolutely true. You can't account for that disruptive technology. Mm-hmm. Who would have thought if you looked at a trend, and the trends you had could identify, the mobile media devices and so on. You could look at the purchase rates. The trends might say, okay, we want more memory, less size, longer battery life, and so on. None of that data would have said, hey, there's this demand there for the ability for me to share what I have on my device with you, And so you would only be able to capture that if you actually thought about it at some previous time, asked the question in a survey, and then tracked the interest in it to get a trend. The problem with surveys and questionnaires and this sort of thing is that they are very good at telling you what you do today. They are not very good at telling you Sorry, the people that respond to them are very good at telling you what they do today. Those people are not very good at telling you what you do tomorrow.
Yeah.
For example, as part of the Dev Tracker stuff, we tracked Java usage, as a language. And, we would backstart, in the 98, 99, 2000 timeframe, we would, out of the entire professional development market, so, your mileage may vary if you say, oh, but in this segment it's, 2,000%. In the entire market, we asked how many people were using Java, and it averaged 6 to 8%. Sort of professional developers were using Java. But we asked them in 6 months, what is going to be your primary programming language? Yeah. And in 6 months, 50 to 60% of the developers would tell us, oh, I'll be programming in Java in 3 to 6 months or in 6 to 12 months. Now, we asked that same question every 4 months for the space of 3 years. And what we saw was very sort of slight increase in usage of Java. It went from 4 to 5% in 98 through to 8 to 9% in 2000.
Yeah.
Which realistically is actually almost within the margin of error of the survey.
Yeah.
Not to say that the Java technology wasn't successful, but that was the actual "are you doing it" developer usage rate.
Yeah.
But each 4 months they tell us 60% of them would say, "I'm going to be doing nothing but Java in 6 months."
This is an interesting thing because I'm studying trends too, because I'm reading the blogs, so I'm reading like 1,200 RSS feeds every night, and I've noticed there's the mainstream, which is sort of your usage model, right?
Right.
That's the actual, what are people using? And then there's the blogosphere, which, if you're studying a beach, the mainstream is the beach, the blogosphere is one rock on the beach, Well, but the blogosphere attracts passionate people, right? So if you have an auto blog, for instance, there's a couple of car blogs out there, you already see they attract the people who are just over the top into cars. They're the guys who spend $100,000 tricking out their car and spend every weekend, rebuilding their dash and rebuilding their fenders and whatnot. Those kinds of people get attracted to blogs. Then the journalists then watch those blogs.
Oh, that's actually me. So.
That's funny. Good ringtone. Anyways, so Howard Dean said this, right? Howard Dean attracted a very passionate, audience that started giving him money, that started raising hype, that got him, everybody thought he was going to win the Iowa primary.
Right.
Well, he didn't win the Iowa primary because he didn't translate out of that blogosphere into the mainstream. His TV ads fell short. Right. And people, when they saw him, didn't like him. Outside of the passionate ones. The passionate ones liked him because they talked their language, but the mainstream, mom and dad who aren't really into that, into politics that much, we're looking at something else.
Right, and that's exactly why, you can't, you can't account for disruptive technologies. You can't rely solely on point-in-time surveys. You can't rely in people to tell you where they're going, with any high degree of accuracy, and that's why the whole process that we take in getting to the point of saying, okay, what is the vision for the product, actually utilizes a multitude of these research areas.
Right. I assume you go to conferences as well. Are you going to VS Live next week?
Right, I'm actually not going to VS Live, unfortunately. I have to go to Costa Rica, but that's, it was a trade-off, VS Live, Costa Rica.
But I assume you go to a lot of, because that's where I see the disruptive technologies. People pull you aside in the hallway and show you something.
And if you go back to your podcasting example, that's cool, and, it's all hot in the rage right now. But unless the broad market actually cares about it, there's not really a market for it.
Yeah.
Now, the trouble is to say, would somebody that didn't even know they could do that type of thing care about it if they were told it exists, and so on. So that's why we have these multiple things we do, and one of the other things that we're in the process of completing right now is things we call our habits and practices research, which is trying to go to the customer and say, okay, when you build software, what are the things you're doing? What are you trying to achieve? Not asking you, what do you like about the tool, or when you compile software, do you like this compiler? Do you use the command line? Do you use a GUI? The aim is to generate what we call an outcome statement, and or what is called an outcome statement. And the aim of that is to sort of say, okay, you want to have a direction part of it, you want to have a measurement part of it, and you want to have the actual thing. So, for example, one of the outcomes might be minimize the amount of time it takes to find a method signature. So the minimize is saying, okay, the direction we want to decrease it. The thing we want to decrease is the time that it takes a developer to find one, and the thing is finding a method signature. So you could imagine that if you look at a group of those, there might be method signatures, there could be classes, there could be a whole heap of things that when you look grouped together, you say, a solution to that would be IntelliSense, statement completion, that sort of thing. So by looking and seeing what people are actually trying to achieve, rather than asking them, do you like this tool? Would you prefer it in green? Asking what they're trying to achieve, so that we can get together then and look at these outcomes, and we can take those, build a questionnaire, and the questionnaire is fairly simple. It only has two answers to each. It has two asks on each question, which would be, tell us how important this is to you, and tell us how satisfied you are with your existing solution. So a VS user might say, yep, statement completion, very important, I'm very satisfied. And so at the end of it, what we do is we get this back, we'll go out to hundreds and hundreds of developers and or customers and ask them about this. And then what we'll be able to do is look for groupings of things and say, these sort of attributes across these outcomes, all rated, very important, with low satisfaction. So there is an opportunity there for us to say, is to do something in our product which would, increase the satisfaction of users across this sort of grouping of thing. Then what we do is we take that sort of data, and again, for want of a better word, we conduct what's referred to as an ideation phase, where basically the team sits down with the research group that ran the surveys for us and was running this habits and practices research for us, and we bring, we sort of say, okay, tell us what the groupings are you found, what did the data show, what's the interesting stuff out of that, and then we, as the product unit responsible for building Visual Studio and the framework and so on, look at that and go, oh yeah, okay, there's a, that, what does that mean for the sort of the development tool space? Well, obviously there's a need for integrated help, or there's a need for better tools to automate documentation or something. Okay, and we can list a set of ideas that come out, and we can weight those ideas to how difficult are they to implement, how much value do they return to the customers, how differentiated are they in the marketplace. And then we can take that, and then we look at the sort of the vision and the technology themes that we have as a corporation about where we would like to see software development go, and where we'd like to see the marketplace move. And we can meld those all together to come up with what is the vision for and the value proposition for Visual Studio Orcas.
Right. So you're really just defining the vision up front like that. It's interesting.
Right. We're taking a new approach to actually, rather than go off, build it, and work out how to sell it.
Right.
That's
quite a bit different from the open source model, right? Which is more of a scratch your own itch model, which is build yourself something cool, and hopefully other people will like it, which also works, right? Apple Computer started with that model.
Right. I'm not saying that this is the only way to build successful software, because, between the time we take this and, the time it gets on air, some other company's going to be successful in what they do that won't have used this process.
Yeah.
We want to use this process because one of the key things that we want to deliver is a tool or a product that really does, match the unfulfilled needs of our customers.
Right.
And so we're doing all this research and working out what that is. And then what we want to do is we want to understand this. I could go into the whole, you can actually, sort of see, this is the integrate. I don't know if you can see this, but
we can see, man. Hold it still. This is sort of like Johnny Carson, or David Letterman. Cool.
So
this, what is that?
This is the sort of the block model of the entire process of mapping, the marketing with product planning, with engineering, and so on. And so really there is this two parts to this process. There's the actual, what we refer to as inbound stuff, which is basically the customers telling us what do they want.
Yeah.
What should the product be? What does it look like? What needs does it need to fulfill? How do you how should it be architected? What color should it be in, and so on.
Right.
And then there's the outbound part of it, which is saying, okay, what do we, once we've built it and so on, what do we tell people?
Right.
Moving on the outer side of it, what is it, what's important about the product and so on. What we, products tend to sort of evolve in one of two ways, which is, the product either has a vision and it fulfills that vision and it's focused solely on the vision.
Yeah.
Think of like the Xbox was a good example of this. When they first started, there was a lot of talk and stuff about, Microsoft produced the Xbox, but they're really producing a home media center and blah, and it's going to be the PC in the PC in the living room. It's going to control your lights and all this sort of stuff. The Xbox team were very focused that we are producing a game machine.
Yeah.
And so they had their vision, and they executed against the vision.
Yeah.
How
did that vision evolve? Because I'm studying, successful businesses, not only here at Microsoft, and the Xbox and the Halo 2 Halo 2 clearly in the last 6 months turned.
Right.
I was in line in Silicon Valley with 300 people waiting for Halo 2 to come out. That clearly was.
I was the same here at Redmond.
Oh yeah, Well, we expect it here, right? but not in Silicon Valley where everybody supposedly hates Microsoft.
Right. And I can see it was myself and 4,000 other Microsoft employees lined up to get there.
And I'm studying Apple, and I'm studying Google, and I'm studying eBay. All the successful businesses. I think it's interesting, but. Where was I going with this? So, the thing that they do, where does that vision come from that says, I'm going to do something different than the market research is telling me to do?
So I'm not going to talk about the Xbox vision, right? Because,
But all of them are, eBay is that way.
I'm not going to use them as examples. I don't know how they came up with their vision. And, it's probably worthwhile going over and interviewing one of those guys.
Oh, I'm planning.
Hey, look, it actually.
I've heard some of their marketing guys talk, but they didn't cover where that, So was it just Bill woke up one day and said, I want a video game player for my kids, and all of a sudden this vision appeared.
So how visions happen, in large companies. In small companies, the vision process is pretty easy. You sort of think about something and you say, okay, wouldn't it be cool if, I could do this? Or wouldn't it be cool if I could solve this problem? And then you start thinking about it and, you're at the bar, you ask a few of your mates, you talk about it, you get positive feedback and people say, oh yeah, I'd love something that could do something like that. And then you go, okay, great. Now I've got my vision. And so now I need to go and execute on it. At larger companies where you've got more sort of pulling on what you're trying to do. You know, you've got to deliver certain things to certain constituencies, and you know, Office has a particular vision for Office, and they have particular requirements that the development tool must support the developers that use Office that support their vision and things like that. It's a bit harder than, you know, for us to sort of lock ourselves in a room and say, okay, what's going to be the vision? Yeah. You know, we have some strategic goals at Microsoft as a corporation. You know, we have some strategic goals in each of the business units and so on. And generally, what you do is you sit down and you say, okay, you know, what are we trying to, as a corporation, trying to achieve? You know, what are ourselves and Windows trying to achieve? You know, and then what we will, you know, what we do is we think about that and we say, okay, you know, what is, you know, boil that down a bit, you know, because when I'm talking vision, I'm not talking, you know, like the sort of the plaque on the wall type, you know, guy in the rowing boat saying there's no I in team type vision. You know, it's like, you know, it really is, okay, we want to, you know, what we want to do is make enterprise software deployment easier. We want to minimize the amount of time it takes somebody to turn a computer on that they just bought from a store and be on the internet. You know, stuff like that is sort of the things. And you bring a few of these together and you say, okay, really, what is the type of vision that you know, you can build?
That's the tough part of working here at Microsoft, isn't it? Because we don't make we're not a one product company, you know, where you, like, you think of eBay, I think of auctions, right? You think of Amazon, you think of a store, you know. Right. But when you think of Microsoft, you think of everything from the Xbox to the Spotwatch to the Pocket PC to the, you know, a big server underneath your desk here, you know, to a data center that's running Citibank or what, you know, whatnot.
And everyone that watches this video clip will point out that this is actually a Compaq ProLiant 5500. It's a Pentium Pro based machine. Yeah. Yeah. This thing is...
We had to turn it off just to have this interview because we couldn't hear each other.
This thing's almost as old as I am. But it has an absolute ton of really, really fast SCSI, ultra-wide SCSI to disk in it. Yeah. Run no software on it. Use it as a file server.
I mean, to the smartphone, to, you know, the portable media devices. That, I mean, and that's that's what I'm having trouble with, even being out in public about on, you know, Microsoft Public Face, because it's so big a company with so many products. You know, it's hard to actually say, hey, you know, the next version of something is going to stand for this. You know?
And sometimes you have to trade that off. You know, like you can't have, you know, a vision. You know, if we go back to like what Microsoft's sort of vision statement was in, what, 1990, you know, the vision statement was a computer on every desk. Yeah. You know, I think was the vision statement. Possibly it was a computer on every desk running Windows, but it was the, it was I think it was like a computer on every desk. Well, then the vision statement became information at your fingertips, you know, and so on. Yeah. And those things are, that's the plaque on the wall type vision statement. You know, it makes great slide text and that sort of thing, but what does it really mean for you? Well, it provides a little bit of guidance. You know, the information at your fingertips concept was really about connecting, you know, you as the user with the different information sources you had in the enterprise, at least for us in the developer division. You know, some other groups may have looked at that and gone, oh, well, it means something different. So the key is to think about all the different, you know, all the different visions that sort of exist, and how they map to the corporate vision, and what does it mean for the constituencies that we deliver tools to internally, and technologies that we have to support. Right. And sometimes you have to trade off stuff. Sometimes you have to say, okay, look, you know, due to ship cycles and resources, you know, I'm not going to be able to do a great job on supporting your technology. You know, if you look at, for example, DirectX in the original frameworks, you know, we had no managed code wrappers around DirectX. So the only way you could write a DirectX game or any DirectX-based app in the .NET framework is to use pinvoke or write your own managed C++ libraries and that sort of thing. So in that particular case, we, sort of directly said to the DirectX team, no, we can't. We don't have the resources to implement that. The DirectX team, fortunately, said, well, we have some, and they were able to build an initial version of their managed classes for the DirectX API. So you have that trade-off, and what we're trying to do in planning the next releases of Visual Studio is to say, okay, we could take 5 years to build a product with 50,000 engineers that delivered excellent implementations on everything, but unfortunately, by the time we ship it, the market will have moved on, both our constituencies will have moved on. Yeah. So we have to make this sort of this change in these trade-offs. And one of the things we're looking at in terms of Orcas is, what type of thing do we want to enable? What is the, is Orcas about enabling the Longhorn wave? Is Orcas about supporting Office 12? Is Orcas about improving the web development experience? Is Orcas about, extending our development tools around the software development lifecycle? There are all these things that we could do. Yeah. And then we run.
Whidbey is about better deployment and more productivity, right?
Right. Whidbey is the dual, ASP.NET 2.0, which, quite frankly, it just rocks. It's, until you've played with and written stuff with it, you just don't realize how cool it is.
Were you the guy who did this on Whidbey?
No.
Oh, so you're
no,
is this the first time you're doing
this is the first time the division is doing this.
Really?
Yeah. I could give you commentary on how we used to do things, but
is it called stick your finger in your ass?
This is the first time we're taking a more formalized approach. A lot of what we're doing really isn't that different from how we did it before.
Right.
But what we want to do is take a more formalized approach so that there's better research, there's better customer understanding. We have a better value proposition. We know what we're building is going to, address customer needs, and customers are going to want to buy. The Ballmer has the little tagline that Steve uses on this whole process is, build what will sell and sell. So build what you sell and sell what you build.
Yeah.
And it's the whole concept of saying, make sure we understand what the market wants so that we can build something that's sellable, and then make sure that our field and our sales groups and so on, and then the end customers can understand what we've built.
Yeah.
And you can look at some stuff that we've done that has been less than well received in the marketplace. We've tried something, realized, okay, that was a bit poor.
I mean, that's part of Microsoft's culture, right? Over by Building 16 is a whole courtyard.
The little brass plaques.
Yeah, and you see hundreds of glass plaques. Each plaque, I should take the camera over there, but each plaque has a different product name on it, right? And how many do we know? Most people out there can name Windows and Office and Xbox and Visual Studio. You can name maybe 10 things that Microsoft built that have been successful out of hundreds and hundreds of products.
A common statement about Microsoft is that nothing we ship is good until version 3.
Yeah.
Right? And that's actually pretty well deserved. It's well deserved for two reasons. We actually have some smart people here.
One or two. Not in this room, right?
Contrary to my performance on stage at conferences. But we have a ton of smart people here, and they have an idea, and they know, they go through this little startup, the startup concept of a vision, and we can build something and create it and architect it and get it out into the marketplace. And then unfortunately, that product comes, screeching bird-like into the glass window of reality. And they go, oh, okay, well, we missed this, we missed this. Yeah. One of the good things is that, about how we build our software is, we might not get V1 right. This is in the past. We might not get V1 right, but damn it, we're going to stick on it. We're going to ask our customers, we're going to say what should be in it. We're going to look at why we're losing, what do we need to add to the product, then we'll do a V2, then, we'll go out there and we'll say, okay, blah, 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 we'll do a V3. So I remember working on OS2 1.1, and at the time that was Windows, 286 and so on. And, and OS2 was the UI for me was just a much better UI. I felt much more comfortable in it, all that sort of thing. And it was just a much better operating system at the base. But we knew what we wanted to do with the melding of Windows and DOS and the multitasking of the existing market and all that sort of stuff. And I remember back when we were coming around to releasing Windows 3.0, and we started, I was running this stuff internally and speaking to customers that were using Windows 2.11 at the time, and sort of go, oh, gee, please, it's just so much better. And that's sort of good, in that build it.
I remember. I was a Mac guy back then. I was going, man, look at that ugly.
And look what Apple did. They had their market. They released.
Don't talk smack about.
They released the Lisa. They released the Mac. And it took,
absolutely, it
took them a couple of tries to come out, and the Mac's a great platform, but it took them a couple of tries to get it, and that's, the benefit of that approach is just committing to it.
Yeah.
The problem comes when, you've got to commit, 1,000 devs for 2 years to build something, Okay, now we're talking about 1,000 devs for 6 years to build something to get it to what the market wants, and so on. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
The old joke, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, pretty soon it adds up to big dollars.
Yeah.
So what this whole process is trying to do is to say, okay, let's keep the free thinking aspect of what's the vision, how are we going to map it, what are the technology themes that we can invest in, where do we want to go, but underpin it with a solid understanding of what the customer really wants, what we should be delivering to them, and then how do we communicate it to them so they actually do want to buy it. There are any number of products out there that, are great ideas, but were just communicated poorly that, people are, oh, I don't really understand why I want this. And then when you buy one, you're like, geez, how could I have lived without this,
Yeah, tablet PCs like that, it's a great product. And we're not showing it off on TV. We're not showing, we're not explaining why you want a tablet instead of a notebook. And it's
well, the tablet PC, my biggest complaint with the tablet PC is, which I always think is funny, is that it has now enabled you, before you were just sending me, incoherent, grammatically incorrect emails, and now you've had the added benefit of making them illegible as well.
You're talking about when people write you emails in ink.
Yeah. But there is, a ton of space for this. So I think, you can look at this stuff, and until you sort of understand what you're doing, like when we first shipped the Pocket PCs, the Palm guys, and that Palm market was, oh, I don't need a machine with this much processing power and this flexibility and all that. There'll never be a need for it, and so on.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing is that if you looked at the market today, the entry-level Palm market, that's cell phones today.
Yeah.
They just, this year is the first year.
And both us and Palm missed the Nintendo market, which my son just bought a Nintendo DS for $150, and it has it has really nice graphics and 2 screens and audio on it, and it's using similar technologies, but in a much different way than either us or the Palm.
So if you look at that Pocket PC though, that Palm end fell into the cell phone market.
Yeah.
Their upper end, to be competitive now, is trying to replicate the Pocket PC. The Pocket PC found a niche in not so much the PDA space as it was in the handheld small device space. One of the best uses of it that I thought was pretty cool was the US Navy SEALs use the Pocket PC as an in-field medical database. So the Navy corpsmen that are involved, when they can look up a medical emergency on the Pocket PC, and they can carry with them, basically with that, an expert system and you know, the Encyclopedia of Medical History,
Yeah.
to help them in the field when they're treating an injured seal. You know,
Yep.
and that's a great example of something which, yeah, you wouldn't run it on a cell phone, but geez, you don't really want to be carrying a laptop. You know, and I'm not saying the Pocket PC was the only solution, but it was that processor, memory, form factor model.
No, I
Right.
split the industry up into what, 8 or 9 areas, right? You got your wrist, something you can put on a wrist, right? You got something you can put in a pocket, something you can put in a briefcase, something you can put on your coffee table at home, something you hook up to your TV,
Yep.
something that is like a server, like you guys,
Yeah.
you have 2 servers underneath your desk. And what else is there? Weird devices,
Right.
which are like the sewing machine. Did you see the sewing machine with the digital?
Right, the Windows CE built into it, and
you know,
you could upload the patterns, and it would.
And there's exercise bikes and
Right.
stuff like that. In the car, there's 2 places for
Right.
PCs. There's the front seat, you know, where you have navigation and stock quotes and stuff like that. And there's the back seat for the kids, you know,
Right.
games and DVDs.
Right.
You know.
So we did a similar thing in sort of the thinking through the planning for how we would look at the market for Orcas. We knew the market was very big, and we you know, very diverse. We couldn't conceivably cover everything. So we took some steps and said, okay, excuse me, we want to look at professional developers this time around. And specifically the market segments we're looking at were the developer, the tester, the architect, and a segment we haven't looked at before, which is the user interface designer, you know, the person that lays out how a UI looks. But we realized that associated with the entire software development lifecycle, there are IT pros, there are business decision makers, there's project managers, you know, users that we need to go and look and see how to understand how they integrate into the software development process. Then there's the non-professional space, academic, hobbyist, and so on.
Yeah.
And we knew we wouldn't be able to do all of them in one hit. So, you know, we sat down and we said, okay, we're going to like pick some areas. We'll invest in those, we'll get that research. Next financial year, we'll do the same process again, but we'll look at some of the additional areas. And our hope is that if we can do our, you know, do the cycle closely together enough, that there won't be a radical change in the marketplace, you know, between the 2 sets of research.
Well, you're really designing Visual Studio that's going to be used in the year 2010, right? I mean, it might come out in 2007 or 2008, but, you know, that's a big number. You know,
I'm not going to commit to a ship date.
I try. You know this, I try. But, you know, somewhere in that time frame is when this is going to come out.
I would hope that between, ignoring the Whidbey ship this year, I would hope sometime between now and 2010 we would ship 2 releases, at least 2 releases of Visual Studio.
Okay.
Right? But yeah, it's like, you know, we're looking to plan, you know, the product that would come out around the time frame of Longhorn, and then the next product after that.
Okay.
You know, so we're looking to.
And that's a constraint right there, right?
Right.
If you know you only have 15 months to build a product, you know that you can't do
certain things.
Yeah, you can't reboil the ocean, right?
So
you can take a pond to boil.
Again, we take that aspect of, okay, you know, when we think about the vision and the technology themes and so on, and the research that we've produced and what our users have told us and all this sort of stuff, we bring that back and we say, okay, now
it's mine. Buzz Bregman, CEO of ActiveWord System. I'm not going to answer.
So, you know, you can take all those, you should probably cut that bit. Right? But you know, it's Blair on the phone, I'm not going to answer.
He's a good friend of mine. You'd enjoy that.
Which is why when I cut my mate off, I didn't tell you that. Right? You know, you look at all those things, and then you can go, okay, you know, we need to scale back the vision of the product. You know, it's no good saying, you know, NASA would be insane, for example, to, you know, if this was 1960, to say we're going to put a man on Mars.
Yeah.
You know, without saying, okay, You know, maybe we should first put a man on the moon. Maybe first we should put one into the air.
Yeah.
You know, and go through that process.
And they had hundreds of tries before they got to the moon. You know?
Right. Well, not hundreds, but they
dozens at least.
Right. Well, there was all those different projects,
Yeah.
and you know there was the 9 Apollo projects that actually went into space but didn't land on the moon.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, so that's what we're looking at. Like in Orcas, you've got the problem space or the opportunity space. You can decrease that. Is that manageable? You can decrease it again, and the aim is to try and find a manageable opportunity that we can deliver on, and the thing we deliver really matches what the customers want in that space.
Since I get to run around this great company with a camcorder and meet a lot of people, here's some trends that I'm seeing, and I also visit customers. I went to a pistachio factory they run 3 separate huge factories on one tablet PC. That's pretty cool. It's like, which shows you just in 20 years how...
backup tablet in case it fulfills.
Oh yeah. Which shows just how much the world of work has changed in 20 years. I mean, in 20 years, the pistachio factory has moved from a very labor-intensive process to a very machine-oriented process, and where you have, instead of a bunch of hands doing all the work, you have one smart guy who built, or maybe a team of 5 smart guys who built an app and a whole system to run the whole factory. I mean, this factory had dozens of machines, and they were all reporting into a SQL server and all that. But so walking around here, I see more screens, bigger screens, and I'm seeing that also out in the real world. Oakland Airport just bought probably $200,000 of plasma screens.
Yep.
And so now they have these really beautiful screens all in Windows. And I can tell it's the Toho Mofai. But that's a trend that I think is just going to keep going, because the price curve on plasmas or on large screens is coming down, right? You're certainly seeing that at home. That's driving the media center team, right? They're knowing that you're going to go in for $2,000 and buy a 50 or 60-inch TV now, and in 18 months it'll be maybe a 100-inch screen.
Right.
And what can you do with that? How does that change the expectations of what you hook up to it? It's not a VCR world anymore.
And that's part of the vision process, is to sit there and go, okay, where are we going to be at the ship point? What type of apps are people going to be building? And to try and get from the customers, that sort of feel. And then what we want to do is have a ship cycle that enables us to deliver on that sort of thing. Fortunately, in the professional space, customers themselves have the adoption problems. They're building it on a 2-year project, so they're not going to be changing technology any shorter than once every 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's fortunate in that sort of space. What you're saying, the consumer market, those guys, can swap technology in 2 months.
Yeah. But like the plasma screen, I was talking to the CEO of REI, right? And I talked with him for 2 hours in an airplane, and he says he's building a store of the future, because he's seeing the same trend. He's seeing that, hey, I can buy plasma screens for $2,000 now that are really nice and big, and now I can think of a new kind of store. I can, and with RFID now, I can, pull something off the shelf, and on the plasma screen, it starts teaching you about it, or it says, hey,
have you been to the Thriftways?
No.
So there's a Thriftway store. It might actually be all of them. They have a biometric sensor that they deployed as part of their checkout process.
Wow.
You come into the Thriftway, you give them like your credit card, they take a snapshot of your fingerprint, and then to get your groceries, you just buy your stuff, wander up, they whack it across the whole thing, and you stick your finger on the biometric sensor.
Right.
And then it goes off, charges your card, authorizes it, does everything it needs to.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, and then you get you get all the advantage points and everything. You never have to pull your wallet out of your pocket to go do that whole thing. But that's technology enabling new opportunities. And we see that same thing in the development.
Well, it's changing expectations too, isn't it? Because now you need a nicer user interface than, like VB3 doesn't look anything like what I saw at Oakland International Airport. Yeah. It's far more colorful, far more engaging, and also they've had to work on, because you have such a large surface compared to the 640 by 480 of 10 years ago, you have to have a different tool set, really, different methodology. You even said you're paying attention now to graphic designers. Or 10 years ago, you didn't.
No, and that's why what we're trying to do is to think, about what are the types of apps that people are going to be building, what are the types of problems they're going to be trying to solve, what are the opportunities, and how does that let us evolve into our product set, so that by the time we ship Orcas, the customer base that we targeted the tool for is thinking about, okay, oh look, now this tool exists, I can do all these new things. You can deliver two types of tools. You can deliver a slightly incremental improvement. You can ask every feature team to take one pace step forward, and I want you to make statement completion a bit better. I want you to make IntelliSense a bit better. I want you to make the compiler a bit faster. Or what you can do is you can say, okay, we're going to shift resources, because in this release, what we want to do is to provide really better functionality into this area, and make the customer be much more happy or happier with our tool in that space. And you can see this in the Whidbey release. We staffed up and built the whole Visual Studio Team Server aspect. We had the software development lifecycle. We were very good in the implementation phase of that lifecycle. The code, build, debug part of that implementation phase. Not very good in any of the other parts of it. And with VSTS, we're now expanding out into that new area. But we could have had that VSTS team instead work on, making Emacs support in the editor better.
Yeah.
Which of the two is really, more important to our customers? Well, to the Emacs dev, the Emacs support is actually incredibly important. But the
isn't Don Bach still using Emacs?
I can neither confirm nor deny whether I was involved in the decision to cut brief support. We could do that.
Yeah.
Or we could invest on solving solving another problem that our customers have, or making their experience in another part of what our tools do better. And that's what we're trying to do with Orcas, is to say, and this is the point of all this research and the habits and practices and so on, is for us to sit down and say, okay, like, we think, this is the sort of vision we want, these are the sort of things we're going to do. Are they really grounded in fact, or are they really something that, we just pulled out of the air and said, this is cool?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with pulling something out and saying, this is cool, let's bet on this.
Yeah.
But you should never confuse that with being something else.
No. It's interesting, 2 times during our interview here, we've been interrupted by cell phones, right?
Right.
And that's clearly a huge trend in the world. I mean, there's hundreds of millions of camera phones now. I mean, not even cell phones, camera phones.
Right.
And I expect over the next 5 years that new kinds of small devices will come out with far more power than today. I have 500 megs of RAM on here.
So I don't even particularly, I'm not even particularly excited about the device.
Yeah.
I'm more excited about the opportunity that the device enables me to write software for. So for example, the camera phone, I tried, back when WAP first came out, I could go to a WAP site and I could type in the UPC code of a product, and it would go away and do a price search for me, which I thought was pretty cool. I could be in Fry's or CompUSA or whatever. Well, I wonder if this is as cheap as this. I can type the UPC code in and off it's going to do. If you think about these camera phones, people are now starting to think about the concepts of saying, well, I can take a photo of the barcode, and now because these phones have better screen real estate, they're easier to read, I can go off and give you the options of reading the reviews about the device, going to ePinions and getting user reviews, going to one of the shopping sites and saying, here is the conglomeration of different sites and prices, and all that sort of thing. Now, sure, the hardware has enabled me to capture that UPC code in a simpler way because I don't need to type numbers in. I can just point and shoot. Software opportunity that goes a bit further than that. We can build tools that enable you to write these types of applications and exploit these types of devices. And that's, again, one of the things we're trying to do with Orcas is to say, okay, are multiple devices interesting to you? What are you thinking about doing? Do you build apps, that have this, device, sort of usage? And one of the good things is as you start thinking about this is the software development community is becoming more experienced with it. I always use, I love, my mobile example of choice is Newport News Shipbuilding. They're the sole source supplier of aircraft carriers to the US Navy. And their second line of products is nuclear submarines. So,
hey, that's a pretty interesting business.
But they used to take reams of paper through their, when the Nimitz would come in for repair, they would wander through the Nimitz and there'd be hundreds of their members that would have a stack of paper on a clipboard and they'd look at every part of the ship and they'd go, okay, pipe F73A in section blah needs replacing, right? And they'd write that down. And then they'd come out of the ship, give these reams of paper over to to somebody to recode into a system, and then they'd print stuff out or they'd put it on disk and they'd hand it to the thousands of subcontractors that actually did the work for them. And the subcontractors would have to bring it into their system and that. What they did is they used the framework and a Pocket PC, and they have the compact framework on the Pocket PC. And their guys now wander through the Nimitz, and they basically can enter the data directly on the Pocket PC as, this pipe needs replacing. And then when they come out of the bowels of the ship, they can get network connectivity on their wireless network. And the device will automatically sync up with their system, upload all the data. That system then utilizes, a set of web services and orchestration and so on, and automatically spreads the data straight out to the contractor. So there's no delay in or mistakes or anything like that. And that's taking an existing system and automating. It's an example of that. But it's a great example of the connected, disconnected duality of the...
I expect to be completely connected now. I mean, that's just a change in 2 or 3 years where, even McDonald's has Wi-Fi now. I think that's a nutty world where even a fast food restaurant has Wi-Fi where you can bring your tablet in.
I think you're going to see in sort of 20 years the connected disconnected duality of things will go away. But there's a whole heap of telco stuff and so on that needs to be done, and prices need to be driven down and all this sort of stuff. Before a State Farm agent can just open his laptop in the lounge room of one of his people in middle Utah and get a wireless connection back to State Farm servers, and so he can be on.
Here in Seattle, that's there today, but not in Iowa or.
And I think you'll see that that drive across eventually. But this is part, again, to sort of drag it back to the planning process. This is the sort of thing we're trying to get. Is like, where do we think the software development market is going? What do we think is going to be interesting? Let's talk to customers. Let's run some focus groups and so on. And then what we end up with is we end up producing what we're referring to here as our value proposition. And the value proposition explains, why you would want something, deals with the objections to wanting it in terms of risk and cost and so on. And as long as, this side of the seesaw is much heavier than this side, then customers will have an understanding of why they should, expend the money on it.
Right. Now, do you write? I mean, does your team come up with a plan then, and come up with a list of 30 features that you think that the research has told you to put in the product?
So no, contrary to popular belief, marketing doesn't do feature lists. Here at Microsoft, and neither should we. At least that's my view. You probably get a different view if you go to somebody else's office here. What we should be doing is presenting to our program managers, our devs, saying, hey, this thing is really interesting. this concept, can you make blah easier? Now, you guys are very smart, you know that piece of the product that you're building intimately.
So you might come to them and say, hey, our research is showing that the tablet PC is going nuts, and that we need better inking support and better inking tools. Is that what you would say?
Like think about it. Like we might come back and say, okay, data access in Visual Basic.net is a challenge to customers.
That's going to be one forever.
but it's a challenge. And so our research tells us that if I'm using Visual Basic to build an Office application, that 60% of those VB developers use a database. And we know, on the plus side to Microsoft, we know that, if you're an Office developer using VB, you're half again more satisfied with our products and Microsoft as a company than you are if you're not a developer. So it's within our interest to get people to be using that because they're more satisfied with our solutions and technology. So now we sit there and say, okay, well, the users believe that data access is important. Minimizing the amount of time it takes me to connect to data on a remote data source. That's very important to them. They're not well satisfied today. So there's a whole heap of things around data that we might be able to do. So we would hand that over to work with the product team and say, okay, hey, here's the sorts of things. Here's the vision, here's the technology things, here's the scenarios that we'd like to see the product have. And then what we do is then we work with them and say, okay, you guys think about how to build it.
You tape, by the way.
Oh, are we?
So thanks for spending some time with me, because we're out of tape. We'll keep coming back and doing some more of these as the process goes on, because this is really interesting stuff. And you're going to interact with people on Channel 9 too, right? So
well, you'll have
to leave some messages.